This story isn't personally mine. I came after the fact. I'm a custodial supervisor for about 30 employees at a college. I have this one employee who's a skeptic. She doesn't believe in ghosts or anything supernatural. She's made that very clear on a few occasions. I had her cover the library for a week when someone was on vacation, so it wasn't a building she spent a lot of time in before, but she still knew it enough that she was fine on her own. One morning around 4:30 a.m, she calls me and asks, "What time do the staff start to show up here?" I go on to tell her they start to show up between 7 and 8 a.m. I could tell that she was flustered by her reply. "No, you're wrong, they're here now. Someone's in the bathroom. They're in there making noise, walking around and flushing the toilets. I hear them." I'm like, "Yeah, no one should be in there. Go in and see." "No, I'm not going there. Get over here and tell them to get out," was her response. So I'm like, "Okay, I'll be there in 2 minutes. I'll stop by." I get there and she's standing in front of the bathroom, yelling at me to go in there and tell this person to get out of the bathroom. They shouldn't be down there. I walk in the bathroom, check every stall, come out of the bathroom, and look her in the eye and tell her, "Nope, no one is in there." She then accused me of lying, said there's no way. She'd been standing in front of the door the whole time, didn't see anyone leave, and heard the same noises till right before I got there. I told her to relax. It wasn't a big deal. There was no one in there at all. This was more than likely just a normal library ghost. Of course, at first, this didn't get me anywhere. She still didn't believe me that no one was in there. I then went on explaining to her why I say it was the ghost. Years ago, in about the 70s, they had been doing work on the elevator, and unfortunately, a little girl who was at the library with her father fell down it and died at the bottom. Or the basement, in other words. I even showed her the plaque that was for the little girl. This bathroom that she heard everything in was in the basement, right across from the elevator, no more than 10 feet from where the little girl died. This happened a couple of years ago, and just last month, the same employee was going on about ghosts being not real. Then I reminded her about her time at the library. She then admitted that every time she's in that building cleaning in the morning, she makes a point to tell them not to bug her and leave her alone. Well, they have to help her work. But she still sticks to the same, they don't exist. In March of this year, my family had to put my dog down. He was old, sick, and could barely do anything. He was confused, and it was definitely his time. I'm turning 19, and I've had him since I was 5. I grew up with him. He was always there throughout the entirety of my adolescence, and there was never a time where he wasn't around. He was always the closest to my mom, and he wanted nothing to do with me until I was older. Mainly because as a kid I would play with him like a toy, put him in Barbie cars and dress him up. The night after he died, he visited me in my dreams. In the dream, I was in my grandparents' old basement and I saw him. He was young, happy, and was leading me towards the opposite end of the room. I followed him, and my mom was sitting by the wall. There was an invisible barrier dividing us from her, and he was trying to get through but couldn't. I was crying, happy to see him, and I was asking Mom, "Can you see him? He's here. He's right here." And she said no, she couldn't. I took it as a message that he wanted to get to my mom first, but couldn't. So when I woke up, I felt weak. It hurt to sit up. It was as if a weight was trying to hold me down. All of my energy had been drained. This occasionally happens to me when I have very vivid dreams. It took over a month for him to visit my mom, but when he did, she dreamt of him the entire night. After that, I only had regular dreams about him, nothing too symbolic, just him appearing here and there. Last night, however, he visited me again. In the dream, I was on the phone, standing by the closet. I was about to say something, then I passed out and fell to the ground. I woke up in the dream and saw my dog. He came up to me and I reached out to pet him. It felt so real. I could feel his fur and everything was so realistic. He looked so happy to see me, and I just sat there going, "Are you real? Is this you? Is this a dream?" And he just jumped on me like he used to, and licking my hand. Throughout the rest of the dream, I would try to tell my parents about it, but each time I tried to, I'd pass out again. I think this was his way of keeping it a personal matter between us. My parents divorced when I was 7 years old, and my mother was left with 5 children to raise alone. We lived on the brink of homelessness for a few years. My mum applied for housing assistance, and we were accepted into public housing. We were all so happy. The house was huge. 4 bedrooms, 2 full baths, a large living room and dining room, and a large kitchen. The house was originally a duplex. I recently found out that these homes were over 100 years old. We were all happy to have our own rooms. My room was different. The hall in front of my room was always dark and cold. My room was freezing, and every time I put a light bulb in my closet or room, it would immediately flicker out. One day I was babysitting my siblings. They were on the side of the house writing with pavement chalk, so I went to my room to read my latest Nancy Drew book. As I sat there, I heard someone call my name. It was faint, like someone was yelling my name from a distance. I checked the windows, no one was there. I thought it was the boys next door playing a trick on me, so I continued to read my book. I again heard someone call my name, this time more forceful. I got up and checked the windows, no one was there. I went outside to check on my siblings, and they were still writing with the chalk and having a good time. I went back to my room and continued to read. Several minutes passed, and then I heard the most terrifying voice. A demonic, vile voice screamed my name, and the voice sounded like it was right close to my face. The voice was so angry that I imagined that whatever it was had to be shaking. The voice was shaky and angry and calling my name. I threw the book down, and me and one of my younger sisters moved everything I owned out of the room the next morning. I want to add that underneath my room was a locked cellar that we were never able to access. That side of the house where my room was located was always dark and cool, even on the hottest days. I was so glad when we finally moved out of that house. I drove by the house from time to time, and it still gives me the creeps. My youngest brother was 5 years old when we lived there, and told me when we were adults that he saw a midget with a lion cloth on a climb from under the heater on the floor. Look at him and laugh and then disappear. This bothers me to this day because this thing called my name. I was a troubled and sad teen, and sometimes I think that the evil spirit was trying to entice me to converse with it. I grew up in a Pentecostal church, and maybe a year before this happened, my pastor came to me and said, "Tony, if a spirit talks to you, don't answer." I don't know why he said that to me, but I remembered what he said when the entity yelled my name. I purchased a house last year, and it has a little wooden church glued to the wall, and for now, it'll stay. I want to start off by saying that I only talk about this because it's part of my healing process, and helps me to deal with the trauma of losing my infant son. In 2007, I was 9 months pregnant with my last child. I've had preeclampsia with previous pregnancies, and a placenta abruption with a pregnancy 7 years prior, so I was being monitored closely. Not as closely as I should have been, but that's another story for another time. The evening of December 12th, I became ill. I felt dreadful, and looked at my abdomen and thought it looked rigid and strange. Instantly, I knew I was dying. I can't explain it, but simultaneously, I heard a whisper in my left ear. A soft, gentle whisper that said, "The baby has died." I instantly thought I was losing my mind and yelled at my son to call 911. We were in the middle of a winter storm, so our phones were dead. I finally got a neighbor to call my husband, who took me to the maternity ward of a large hospital. One of the most experienced nurses happened to be on duty, thank goodness, because I coded when I got to the floor. I'd had a 3rd-degree abruption, 4th-degree of death. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital and had to go on dialysis for a while. My ammonia levels were high, so for a while, I thought I had given birth. I did get to hold him. He was beautiful with dark curls. When I got to the med-surg floor, I was coherent and trying to come to grips about why this had happened to me. One night, I had awoken to voices. I thought it was my family in my room. My eyes were closed, but I was awake, and I heard what sounded like 20 people talking about me. I was laying there trying to understand what they were saying about me, but all the people were talking so fast and in a hushed tone. I opened my eyes to find no one there, not one soul. What scared me was as my eyes opened, one person said, "Shh." The second person said, "Shh." Then there was a collective, "Shh." I was terrified, in a dark room with the door shut, and I had a hard time moving around because of my emergency C-section incision. I started calling for my husband. He didn't answer. He often would sleep on the floor outside my bed on a pull-out sofa chair. Suddenly, a small olive-toned girl of age 6 or 7 appeared beside my bed. She had 2 curly ponytails and was dressed in 1970s type clothing. I couldn't see her eyes, just dark shadows. She pointed to the other side of my bed and said, "He's over there." My husband had been on the left side of my hospital bed and was asleep. I turned back to face her, and she was gone. Having that experience in the hospital helped change my insight about death. I know I'll see my infant son again one day. I also think the people and voices I heard may have been the people that had passed at that hospital, as well as the little girl. I felt no threat at all, but was scared because it was so unexpected. When I was a kid, I grew up in a house that had a ton of ghost activity in Puerto Rico, where I'm from. Honestly, in my opinion, demonic even. For background, me, my parents and my 2 siblings all had experiences. When my parents first moved in, their bed would shake at night, and it didn't stop until I had the house blessed by a priest. My brother once was crying uncontrollably on his top bunk bed and refused to look up because he said there was a demon on the ceiling laughing at him. My sister's room was the worst though. She would wake up crying from nightmares almost every night. I found out a couple of years ago from my mom that apparently an old man died in the house before we moved in. But he must have been evil or something, because interestingly enough, the next house we moved to, 2 people committed suicide in, and we never experienced any activity at all. Anyways, here's my 2 worst stories I had in that house. First one was at my sister's room. I was maybe 11 or 12 at this point. For some reason, I had to sleep in her room that night. I think we had a family member over, so they slept in my bed, which was bigger. I was terrified and didn't want to sleep in there because of my sister waking up crying every night with nightmares. I remember I was so scared something was going to happen, looking around the room for a while until finally I started to calm down when nothing was happening. There was a huge tall box in the middle of the room from a fridge we just bought, and I just looked over at it and noticed there was a pitch black shadow leaning next to the box, peering over at me. And as soon as I saw it, it hid behind the box. As soon as this happened, my vision got blurry and distorted, and I couldn't scream for maybe 5 minutes, but it felt like an eternity. Then it went away, and I ran out of the room to tell my parents. I read somewhere that a pitch black shadow of a person was demonic, so this definitely scared me even more. Second one is my least favourite memory, and even talking about it gives me chills and makes me uncomfortable. At this point I was maybe 13. I was in the living room laying on the couch, and I remember my parents were fighting about something in their bedroom, but it was getting pretty bad. It ended up moving into the living room where I was at. They were screaming at each other pretty bad. Then all of a sudden, my mum gets silent and closes her eyes and won't respond to my dad. All of a sudden she starts saying she's Satan, that he's taken over her and won't let go, and telling my dad he's his instrument and a sinner, that he should kill himself. She just kept saying all these horrible things to my dad. He got his Bible and was reading passages to her, and she just kept laughing and saying that wasn't going to do anything. All the while, I'm laying there on the couch scared to death, and my siblings are peering from the hallway, too scared to come in. The absolute worst part about it, though, was that she would go from saying horrible things to my dad, and she would turn and look at me smiling with these horrible eyes asking me, "Are you okay? Do you need anything? Are you hungry? Why do you look so scared? I won't hurt you. I love you." Then go back to my dad and say horrible things to him. Eventually, my dad called someone from the church to read more Bible passages to her, and she locked herself in a room, and then she came out normal a few hours later. It's never left me. As soon as I saw her eyes, I knew that wasn't my mom. I'm 25 now, and I still wonder why that thing in my mom was being so nice to me when it was saying it was a demon. We moved a few years later and never had any more experiences. It was definitely that house. We moved into our first home in February of 2016, but it was an old home, built in the early 1900s in the historic part of town. I loved it. All of the hand-carved woodwork and glass doorknobs with skeleton locks. It was exactly what I wanted and perfect for myself and my husband. I was 3 months pregnant with our first, and we were so excited to start our family. As we got settled in, we noticed the house was very noisy. I rarely have my home quiet due to having tinnitus and always needing some kind of background noise to drown it out. On the rare occasion the house was quiet, there was always lots of clicking and moving, mostly coming from the loft-style attic we had. We shook it off to the house settling and being old. At least, that's what my dad told us. So we moved on. Spring came and we were scrambling to get ready for the baby. The house needed a lot of work, but we were determined to get it done. The first major encounter was on a beautiful spring day. It was the weekend, and my husband and I were spending our day off working on the house. I was cleaning the kitchen, and he was working on my car and our detached garage. The way this home was built, you could see the detached garage from the window that's above the kitchen sink. I would glance out every now and then to see what he was up to. A little time passed, and I hadn't looked out at him. I started doing the dishes when I heard him walking in the living room towards the kitchen. I could feel his presence, and without turning back, I said, "Hey, babe." No answer. Wondering why he didn't answer, I looked back over my shoulder, only to be met with a dark silhouette of a man standing between the living room and kitchen. In the blink of an eye, the figure was gone. Unsure of what I had just seen, I yelled through the window for my husband, who was still in the garage. He came in, and frantically I told him someone was in the house. Immediately, he went and grabbed his weapon and checked all over the house. Nothing was there. In all of the years we lived in that house, not once did my husband see our roommate. I saw him all the time, out the corner of my eye, peeking around corners, but more than anything, I saw him looking into the living room from the staircase that led to the attic. In the beginning, he frightened me, but after a while, I got used to him being there. I even spoke to him sometimes, telling him I'm okay if he stays in the attic and asking him to leave my baby alone. He seemed to have agreed, since in the 5 years my son lived there, he never saw him. While we went to sell our home, the realtor brought us some historical information she found regarding the house and our neighborhood. We found out that our house and our neighbor's house was built by a brother and sister. Our home was my brother's. Their last name was the same as our current neighbor, so I figured he was most likely a descendant. I asked him one day, and he told me that the sister was his mom, and his uncle owned our home. He said he was a kind man who lived alone and died in the home many years ago. I asked him about the attic, and he said that was his uncle's favorite place in the home. He kept all of his trinkets and projects up there and would spend hours working on things. I didn't tell him I believed my house was haunted, as he didn't seem like the type who would believe me. Our home was listed and sold within the same day. Sometimes I wonder about the man in the attic. If the new owners are nice to him or have even noticed his presence. I hope they'll give him his space, as they're only passers-by in his home, like we once were. Ever since I was an infant, my mother had noticed that I had an aptitude for the paranormal. And I was her third child, so I know it wasn't something she was expecting. My brother and sister had never terrified my mother as much as I had. When I was not even 2 years old and had only just begun to talk properly, she would take note of me going into rooms where nobody else was around and walk in on me talking to empty space. Not fun talk like one would have with an imaginary friend, but full-blown complex conversations. Like I was curious and questioning rather than playing imaginary. I was heard saying things that I, as a 2-year-old, would never have heard from anyone else. Then one night, not long after, I had a dream and woke up sobbing when my mom asked me if I'd had a nightmare. She said that I had told her that my friends are dead in the lake. Like it was a revelation. As if through a dream, I had finally realized that the friends I had been talking to were dead. After that, there were many other experiences, even as I got older. When I was 11 or so, I was curious about out-of-body experiences. And I read that if you lie down and imagine water rising around your body, you can force yourself to have one. I tried many times and only succeeded once. I felt myself float, looked down at myself, got freaked out and fell to the floor beside my bed and woke up in shock. I've told my mom that I saw people around our house once I had grasped the concept of spirits. And I told her about their distinctive appearances. The man with the hat, the girl, and I distinctly remember seeing a cat in the old house I lived in on multiple occasions. Now that I'm much older, I still feel sensitive. But I've stopped seeing visions. I still remember many of my experiences though, so I'm curious if anyone else has had such experiences from when they were kids. I firmly believe that the younger you are, the more prone you are to the paranormal. Back when I was in college, I had to take a few night classes to finish my program. I was going to school for drafting, and one of the classes was only offered at 5 p.m. This was a bit of a pain for me, as I still lived with my parents, and the college was located an hour away. So getting off at 3 p.m., then driving home, and heading back was pointless. That's why I typically stayed and just killed time at the school unit until it was time. Sometimes my dad, who worked down the street from the school, would wait around, and my mum would meet us for dinner. But other times it was just me killing time. Yeah, it was a pain, but you do what you have to do. One day, near the end of the semester, both of my parents decided to meet up with me, just as we had before. It was getting close to Christmas, and this town happened to be where our closest mall was located. So they decided to use the chance to get in some Christmas shopping. And after we finished eating, they did just that. I went to school, they went shopping, and that was that. Or at least, that's what I thought. With Inventor, despite it lasting a few hours, you could leave whenever you wanted. We were allowed to work ahead, and he didn't care when you left as long as your assignment was done. Being someone who picked up on the program and 3D modeling quickly, I was in the group of kids who were constantly 10 or so models ahead, so it didn't matter when I usually left. This being the end of semester, however, I was out of work to do. I reached the end, so I ended up leaving class extra early, so I called my parents to let them know. They were still at the mall, so I drove over there to meet up with them. I did some shopping myself, and then we packed up the 2 cars to leave. Since they had gifts for me, my dad decided to drive one car, while my mom went with me in mine. Dad left first, so I didn't see what they had inside, and I took out after him. Back then, I still hated driving at night, so I followed him closely on the way back. My dad is a crazy safe driver, so it took longer following him, but it was okay. Felt safer with him in the lead. Getting close to home, we arrived at the T outside of the town I'll call RL. My dad was at the stop sign ready to turn left, but a car was coming. So my dad, being an extra safe driver, he proceeded to peel out and cut the guy off. Now RL isn't the safest town around, and when the guy slammed on his brakes and stopped in the road, I was scared. This is where people would get shot, and the guy stopping terrified me. I sat at the stop sign myself and had no idea what to do. Do I go? Do I wait? What's this crazy guy gonna do? I sat there for a few minutes freaked out before my mom finally said, "Just go." So I did. And the whole time I kept my eyes on the grey car as I slowly pulled out and passed them. They're gone. My mom's screaming shocked me, and I remember saying, "What are you talking about?" As I too realised the car I was passing was not there. In fact, another car then passed through where the first car was sitting. The car was gone. Where I was looking was empty. Later when I got home, we asked my dad about it and he was confused. According to him, there never was a car. He wondered why we stopped and said we were the only ones on the road. Minus the guy he passed down the road a ways 5 or so minutes later. So what did we see? Every time I passed that road, I looked to see if maybe something could have reflected light and made it look like a car. But there's nothing there. Just a cornfield. My story is extremely complex, so I'll try to hit the bullet points as quickly as possible. Growing up in this house, it's a smaller 1960s rambler in western Washington on a half acre that backs up to about 4 miles of greenbelt, and it always felt off. The backyard and looking into the woods, I'd hear things and just have that full panic whenever I'd have to go out. Experienced full giant orbs that would float through the kitchen on certain nights. It would make people fight. My parents got divorced, and my dad lives here alone for about 7 years, and he becomes rageful, out of his mind. In his bedroom, I'd hear breathing, snoring, all of that in his bed, behind me when I'd sit where the computer was. Fast forward to 24, I had just recently gotten sober, gotten my life together, and moved back to take over the house for him, while he bought a new house with his girlfriend. My mother passes from a drunk driver incident, and immediately things happen again. I find Catholic pendants everywhere, and when I hold on to them, they disappear within a week or so. 2 weeks later, we had a tree service come a few giant cedars down, and a guy fell from 25 feet climbing and died right at my front steps. Then, everything became a whirlwind. That feeling when a person walks in and you can feel their energy right behind you. It was like that times 10. One morning, I walk out of my bathroom. My office is open to the window right where he passed, and I see a giant man in white walk past. Mind you, this is 7 a.m., a totally clear sunny morning. The one that really got me the best, I was out in the driveway working on my car, middle of the night, and someone said, "Hey," directly behind my head. I'm under my hood, so I jump out, hit my head, and scream in the same motion. So that was about 5 years ago with the deaths. Now it's toned down, but they're very subtle and smart about it. Glances of people from your peripheral, slight walking and tapping noises. I have a home studio on the same side where the guy passed, and I woke up last week to my speakers on. My interface cranked with the mic on, so it's full feedback out of nowhere. Somehow, I've never caught any pictures or really damning visual evidence, but I'm working on it. I'm with a spirit box. I was born and raised and still live in Savannah, Georgia. I've always believed in ghosts. As a kid, my aunt lived in a very haunted house, and she and my mum had lived in haunted places before then. My aunt's house was historic, gorgeous, and my mum and siblings and I all hated it. Point is that I grew up with a close family telling me stories about their old houses. In 2011, I took a job at a haunted row house on Mary Marshall Row, You may have heard of the haunted Marshall House Hotel. I go in the basement one night. Well, this is the same Mary Marshall. It's diagonally across from Colonial Cemetery, which was a mass grave for yellow fever victims, as well as broken tombstones just leaning against the gates. From the first day, I was horribly depressed. I have depression, but I felt crippled. I also had the urge to jump off the back balcony repeatedly, as crazy as that sounds. Our office manager told me she felt so bad there, she said protection prayers on her way to work daily. Plus, she had the cabinet doors in the supply area scare her badly numerous times. She would close all the doors, walk out of the room, and return to find them open. The house had 4 levels: basement, main, second, and third. My tiny office was on the second, right by the stairs. Up until this time, aside from gut feelings, I'd never seen anything but once. I was returning from my lunch break, entering the main floor from the back door. Got in and reached into the mini fridge on the floor to get a drink. I needed to go to the bathroom, but out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone I thought was a man go into the bathroom and close the door. I figured I'd wait and talk to our office manager, and after 5 minutes, she asked if I was waiting for something. I said I needed to run in the bathroom. She said, well, nobody's there. I was smoking a cigarette on the back balcony on my floor, and through the glass door, I saw the back of a man walking down the hall into my office. I saw pants, shirt, and dark hair. While it looked taller than my boss, I rushed back in thinking he was looking for me. Walking down the hall, my tiny office was in the middle at the far end of the hall against the front of the house. Looked expecting to see my boss and saw no one. I turned and went into his office to see if he was looking for me. He had his feet on his desk and said he hadn't moved in 30 minutes because he was eating his lunch. Our runner was picking up everyone's mail and was in front of my office, about to step onto the stairs to go up to 3. She was walking to a co-worker, also standing in the hall. All of a sudden she screamed, and all 3 of us watched a black shadow float down the stairs towards us, against the wall, and disappear. I hated that job, hated it. I was there for 8 months. This all happened in that span, and all in the middle of the day. I began working for a company whose corporate headquarters is located in 3 separate buildings on the city's first square. When Savannah was built, it was built in a number of squares. This one saw public markets, slave auctions, and public hangings in colonial days. When I began making friends, I'd heard that the main building was haunted by a little girl named Gracie. I assumed that they just referred to her as Gracie because everyone from Savannah knows the legend of Gracie. My friend, who gave me express permission to share, told me that the ghost was indeed Gracie, though I never believed it. She was one of the company's first employees, and she had entered the basement level office many times before anyone else was in mind, the music blaring. She would turn it down and later it would rise again. She got used to it and would tell the spirit, okay, we can't play anymore. It's work time. Gracie Watson is a young girl buried in the famous Bonaventure Cemetery. She was born in 1883. Gracie's father took a job managing the prestigious Pulaski Hotel, and he, his wife, and Gracie, their only child, lived in the hotel. Gracie was known as the life of the hotel, loved by guests and staff. In 1889, she came down with pneumonia and passed away. Gracie's grieving mother soon began claiming that her spirit was still in the hotel. She could still hear her daughter giggling and bouncing a ball on the back stairs. Her husband was convinced that it was grief and took a job at another hotel, then eventually leaving Savannah altogether for his wife's mental health. I'd known Gracie all my life. As kids, we would go to Bonaventure to see her grave, where people still leave toys. Legend has it that if you rubbed the statue's hand at night, her eyes would open. Everyone had a different version of our little urban legend. I worked in the basement for 2 years until my department was moved. After my move, another friend, who also gave me his permission to share, had an experience. He's in his early 50s and a church going Catholic who's extremely well rounded and in a senior position. One day, standing at the desk of another employee, he saw out of his peripheral vision a little girl in a white dress walk out of the basement conference room and walk into a wall and disappear. The person he was standing by said, "You just turned white. Are you okay?" He was in shock. When he told me what happened, I asked if he'd ever had any experiences before, and he said never. He wasn't scared when he saw it. It was just shocking. On a couple occasions, I've seen a spirit. That was my reaction as well. Not scared like I'd expect. Just happened matter-of-factly in the middle of a work day. I was fascinated and began researching the building location. Turns out, that particular building had indeed been the old Pulaski Hotel. On top of that, the bottom of the back stairs of the old hotel would have been in that basement conference room. This story happened in 2007 and gets told every time my family gets together. My nana owns a farm, and she's always had a herd of cows and a guard donkey. In one of her cattle fields, there used to be a large circle of mushrooms that my nana said was a fairy circle. Now, my nana is Irish, and Irish people don't mess with fairies, and she refused to even mow over the circle. When she married my step-granddad, he didn't believe in fairies or the paranormal, and he wanted to remove the circle from the field, but my nana told him not to. He thought that she was being silly, and they would argue about it all of the time. Long story short, he went behind her back and had the fairy circle removed while she was away. When she found out what he did, she refused to talk to him for days and was very angry and upset. 2 weeks after the circle was removed, all of her pregnant cows aborted their calves. My nana was devastated since she's very experienced and careful with looking after her cows, and she had never lost all of her calves before. She has lost one or two, but never all of them. There was also a strange, scary experience that involved me, that my nana believed was also connected. My mum and 1-year-old me stayed with my nana for a few days to cheer her up, since she was still upset about the calves. Somehow, I ended up catching chickenpox, which is supposed to be rare in babies under 1. Luckily, I wasn't too sick, but it still scared everyone. I know that my nana still leaves small offerings in the cattle field, like small cakes and barley water, even though my step-granddad still thinks it's silly. I've stayed at her farm a lot, and the field definitely has a different feel to it than I've never felt anywhere else, especially at night, and I would never stay outside after dark. I know it was probably just 2 random coincidences, but it's become a legend in my family. Since I was a child, I've had these weird dreams where I saw myself in a situation of everyday life. And after a short while, some kind of disaster would happen that would kill me in my dream. And just before I can feel it, I can't wake up. Now here's the part that weirds me out. Some variable time later, I get to see the same time frame. The last scene that went through my eyes just before said incident happened and ended my life. But the difference is that this time, such thing doesn't happen. I could compare the experience to watching a picture. My memory remembers that dream I had when I got to see that last frame before the disaster. I don't want this post to sound like I got superpowers or some kind of made-up thing. I've always supposed this had an explanation, and when I asked my students if they had similar experiences, some of them told me they've been through that as well. As an extra, I'd be definitely grateful if you have experienced something like this and share your experience. Or if you could explain to me why this happens and if there are any case studies or documents relating to it. The year is 2007. I'm 9 years old and my brother is 7. Our parents are out working. Our grandmother is out buying groceries, so we're left alone at our 3-story home. Bored and quite energetic, we decided to play hide and seek. The family house is too big and too old, so we have plenty of space to play around and have fun with. After a few rounds of playing, the turn to seek is mine, and my brother has to hide. Counting up to 10 against the wall, I shout out, "Ready or not, here I come," and begin my search. Despite both of us being somewhat good at choosing difficult and creative places to hide in, my brother went for the most obvious spot I could imagine. On the first floor, behind a curtain and against a wide window, where light reflected his body. His silhouette giving him away at first sight, and his tennis shoes showing at the base of the curtain. Victorious, I tell him, "Come on, that's a real easy spot. It's your turn to seek." He doesn't move and he doesn't answer, so I go upstairs and wait for him to come. Sitting on a sofa against the wall with a clear vision of the stairs. After a good 20 minutes or so, I see my brother come down from the 3rd floor. Confused, he asked me, "Why didn't you come seek me?" I stayed silent for a moment and asked him, "Did you put your runners at the base of the curtain?" He answers firmly, "No." He tells me he heard me talking from the 3rd floor and assumed Grandma arrived and I was talking to her, which wasn't the case. I tell him I thought he was behind the curtain on the 1st floor, and I asked him to come with me to the curtain to investigate. Slowly, we descend the stairs one by one, always keeping our backs to the wall and our eyes on the bottom of the stairs. When the curtain is within our vision, there's no figure there anymore, yet the shoes are there, still at the base. Closing in, I reach out with my hand to the curtain, but there's just air. I keep pulling the enormous curtain, trying to feel something, but an earwig falls from it and lands on my shoulder. Scared, I slapped it away and stepped back. Both of us go upstairs quickly, and I tell my brother what I saw. He reaffirms me that he didn't put the shoes there, and that we should stay put on the sofa until Grandma arrived, so we did. Up to this day, I don't know what I saw back then. Since 3.5 years ago we moved out of the home because of financial problems, and we never experienced something similar ever again. I always took my brother's word as the truth. Since the last round before he hid, I was the one to hide, and I don't remember seeing the shoes on the 1st floor when I did. There's no way he could go from his room in the back of the 2nd floor to the 1st floor and then to the 3rd floor in just 10 seconds without me hearing him run. Perhaps my memories are blurry. Perhaps my brother lied and somehow pulled it off. Or maybe someone or something really manifested then and there. Maybe it just wanted to play with us. Maybe their motives were more sinister. When I was about 5 or 6 years old, I used to sleep in a small room with my mom. We shared the same bed and room. The room didn't have a door. The room was also about 8 by 8 feet. It was small. There was only a small bed and a wardrobe. It was also my grandma's house. One night, I woke up during the night and noticed a lady standing or floating, watching me by the door. Her face was blurry and her body was a long white dress, kind of like a wedding dress or a gown dress. When I noticed her, I wasn't scared or felt anything scary. I was just staring at it. I also tried to wake up my mom, saying, "Mom, there's a lady at the door." She would just ignore me and didn't want to look at it. A few more seconds of me staring at it, I went back to bed. The next morning, I told my family about it during breakfast, but everyone ignored me and told me it was part of my imagination or a dream. As I grew older, my older cousins would tell me the paranormal stuff had always happened in that house. That during nighttime in the kitchen, utensils would start making noises and plates would be moved around as well as cups, as if someone was cooking. Then one time, one family member told me that my grandma's mom used to live in that house and used to sleep in the room I slept with when I was young. She also passed away in her sleep in that room. So after years of wondering what I saw, I finally had closure. My dead great-grandma visited me because she never met me and just wanted to say hi. I also feel like she looks out over me. About 3 years ago, I moved into a house that was built in the 1800s. It was an old Victorian house. Nothing out of the ordinary ever happened there. Just your old squeak sounds at night because of the wind and rain. One day, I met a girl and we started dating. One time she slept over and we started Netflixing and chilling. As we're doing it, I started squeezing her neck with my hand. I'm into choking while doing it, but she didn't like it at all. It nearly turned off the mood. After a few weeks, we stopped seeing each other for various reasons. We weren't compatible, and so we broke all communication off with each other. The night we broke up, I went home and went to sleep. This is when something indescribable happened. Around 3 or 4 a.m., I woke up in my dream and I felt something choking me so hard I couldn't breathe. I was gasping for air. As I was being choked, I saw 2 bright energy bulbs by the side of my bed and I said, "Help me." As soon as I said that, I woke up feeling a bit frightened. That same morning, I wondered what had happened. Then I came to the conclusion that it was the girl's dad who did that to me. You see, the girl told me about her dad and how he died when she was a teenager. She's an only child, so I believe he always looks over her. I strongly believe that after I made her daughter sad, he choked me as I tried to choke her daughter just a few weeks before. He was taking revenge in a way. The 2 bright energy bulbs were looking out over me, so when I asked for help, the choking stopped and I woke up for real. I've not made contact with her daughter again because I'm scared he might choke me again. I literally took it as a warning. I also think she deserves to know that her dad is always with her. My cousin got stabbed during a fight 2 days after Thanksgiving in 2018. It was horrible, and the whole family was devastated. I cried because I was close to him and he was too young to be gone, just 19. A few weeks passed, and I had a dream where my dead cousin spoke to me and told me to buy his car. I told him I couldn't afford it. I woke up and didn't think much of the dream, just that I still missed him. Maybe 3 months later, my dead cousin appeared again in my dream. This time it was more emotional. It was a house party at my mom's house. Big house. Everyone was coming over. The family. That's when Aunt Rosario comes with everybody. Cliff's kids too. I say hello and hug Michelle. One of the kids said, "I remember you." That's when my dead cousin appeared, and he said, "I don't remember me," and then disappeared. But I was the only one who saw him. Then I started crying. The whole family wondered why I was crying, but I couldn't explain to them what just happened. More months go by, and I have another dream with my dead cousin, another cousin and me. We were playing tag, and then we dressed up to go out and have fun in the city. I don't remember much, and it wasn't that emotional, just a fun dream. The last dream I had with him felt like closure, because ever since then I haven't had a dream with my dead cousin. The dream is about a house party with lots of people. I was drinking and having fun, and then I went to a room to do something. After I finished doing what I did wrong, I went to the pool area. I stopped walking and noticed my dead cousin in the hot tub. He turned around, smiled at me, and took a sip of his drink. Then I woke up. I believe my cousin has finally found peace. He's now on the other side and is no longer scared or afraid. He knows he's gone, and that was his way of telling me not to worry. I still miss him. I lived in my apartment in Brooklyn for a little over a year now, without much going on. Just recently though, my fiancé and I have had a few strange things start to happen. I think taken separately, most of the events could have some explanation, but it's all of them together in a short time span that makes me wonder if something else is going on. In no particular order, here's what we've experienced. Drinking glass on my fiancé's side of the bed broke by itself in the middle of the night. Top half of the glass just broke clean off. We both woke up to the sound of it. I thought someone had thrown something at our window, but when we checked, we saw the glass was broken. Nothing had knocked into it. No major temperature variations that we know of. Maybe explainable by some weakness in the glass. About a week later, a glass candle broke in a similar fashion. We had burned the candle before, but it wasn't lit at that time, and similarly, the top half of the glass just broke off on its own. Could also be weakness in the glass, but weird it happened so soon after the other glass broke. I saw a shadow move across our bedroom in the middle of the night. Didn't have a discernible shape, but it moved in front of one window, then against the wall, then in front of the other window. No way to be a shadow from the other side of the room, but possibly I wasn't fully awake. Fiancé has also seen a shadow figure moving across the hallway in the apartment. Fiancé's DSLR camera, which was hanging up on a hook on the wall, turned on by itself and started taking pictures. I wasn't home, but my fiancé was and showed me the pictures after. Nothing special, just the floor, but we can't explain that one. I heard the very clear sound of a door creaking when I was in the bathroom, but there was definitely nothing opening or closing in the apartment. When laying in bed for a few seconds, I heard what sounded like a staticky old radio. It was brief, but very strange. Sounded like it was right above me. While I can hear our neighbours sometimes, this definitely sounded like it was in the bedroom and did not sound like a neighbour. None of them are too crazy, and I think each separately could have some explanation. But the fact that all of these happened just in the past month or so is interesting to me, and nothing had happened prior to that. This was a weird one. Friday night, I had some family over in my backyard for a social distance dinner. My parents bought their 5-month-old puppy, and I had a larger 2-year-old dog. I was playing with the dogs and brought 2 balls over to where the smaller puppy was hanging out and set them down. An orange/blue ball and a purple ball. I'm squatting down there in the grass. Both balls are on the ground about 2 feet in front of me. The small pup is next to the balls, and my dad is sitting in a chair next to or above the small dog. I threw my dog one of the balls, the orange and blue, and she ran to get it. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw the purple ball get thrown towards the back of the yard. I assumed my dad threw it because he was sitting right there, but he didn't seem to acknowledge that he threw it or ask the pup to go fetch it. So after hesitating a moment, I asked my dad if he had thrown the other ball. He said, "What ball?" I said the purple ball that was right there, and again, he had no idea what I was talking about. At this point, I'm a little weirded out, and I go to the back of the yard, about 40 feet back, and sure enough, the ball was back there on the ground. I again, very confused, explained to my dad what happened, but he didn't see it get thrown and didn't know what happened. No chance the puppy could move the ball that far, she's tiny. Nobody else was nearby, or even paying attention. We've experienced some of the strange things in the apartment and even in the backyard, but this definitely is one of the strangest. A couple weeks ago, I stayed at the Old Harbour Inn in Savannah, Georgia. I didn't know it was haunted before booking, but after I learned of Savannah's general hauntings, I did see our hotel listed as one of the haunted hotels in the city. I stayed for 2 nights with my girlfriend and our dog. First night was uneventful. Second, at around 3 a.m, the carbon monoxide detector started chirping, the out-of-battery type chirp. I found the source of the chirping and took the detector off the wall to remove the battery for the night, but I found that it was hardwired into the wall. So it wasn't low on battery, nor had the power gone out because the alarm clock next to the bed still had the correct time. Eventually pressed the hush button so we could sleep, and put the alarm back, which then switched back and forth between green and red lights. Tried to go back to bed, but our dog was thoroughly freaked out. She was trying to squeeze behind the dresser and just get as far into a corner as possible. Ultimately, she ended up coming into the bed and sleeping with us. Now, this might not sound so crazy, except for the fact that our dog never sleeps in bed with us. My girlfriend has tried to get our dog into bed with us pretty much every night since we got her, but she's just not that type of dog. She was maybe more scared than I've ever seen her. We all finally get to bed, And in the morning, I check the alarm and it's back to fully green, fully functioning. No idea if that was the resident ghost or what happened, but it definitely was an odd experience. And given the hotel's history, I have to consider the fact that we had a visitor that night. When I was around 8 or 9, my whole family went to a quinceañera, and I guess we were good friends with the birthday girl. We received a quince doll that's basically meant to look like the birthday girl. To give you an image of what it looked like, imagine a doll with a white dress and curly hair. We kept it in the living room where I slept on the floor, and my brothers and I always had some weird feeling about it, like it was always watching us. I'd say around 3 to 4 months of it being in the living room is when I started to notice weird things happen, in not only the living room, but also in both of my brothers' room. I'll start with my experiences first. Like I mentioned before, I used to sleep in the living room. I would lay down near my parents' door and start to hear the strangest noises coming from near the TV or near the small cabinet we put the doll on display. From things in the kitchen to falling on the floor to hearing a girl laughing on the couch. And I'd pretty much try to ignore all this with tears in my eyes, doing what kids do when they're scared, and cover myself with my blanket. But one experience will forever haunt me, and I still get chills thinking about it. I was crying one night for God knows what. My brother tells me it's because I was claiming I heard voices near my ear, and my parents didn't believe me, and told me I was delusional. He invited me into his room to sleep, and I jumped at the opportunity. Just before entering the room, I went to the restroom right next to it. While I was peeing, I felt someone's hand right on my shoulder. I immediately turned around and got freaked out and decided to flush the toilet, wash my hands, and get the hell out. But that wasn't the worst that happened. I entered his room and slept on his bed while he just played on his PS3. I slept for maybe around 20-ish minutes before waking up to him coming into the room with food. I shit you not, the moment he sat down, the closet door swings open with enough force to hit the wall. We look at each other in disbelief about what we just saw. My dad bursts in and tells us what the hell was going on. We tried explaining to him what happened, and he just shook it off and told us to go to sleep. We walked out the room, and my brother continued to play, trying our best not to talk about it when we heard the toilet just flush on its own, along with the shower curtain moving. Mind you, no one was in there. We would have known since the door always creaks open and shuts with a pretty distinct sound. That room, I'd like to say, is where the most activity always happened. The guy we let rent out that room always said he was scared of it because he needed a place to stay. He just dealt with it. That was my experience when I was younger onwards to my older brothers. So I want to start with the youngest of my older brothers. Let's call him Dave. Dave slept in the room on the other side of the house, completely away from the doll, but with a massive window that had a hole within the curtains. He had things happen in the afternoon, like tools being thrown from one side of the room to the other, the TV falling, and unexplainable scratches on his chest. But the one thing that scared the shit out of me was the dreaming he had about the girl in the white dress. This happened to both of my brothers. The dream started off with what he described as a normal dream, until he noticed the white-dressed girl at his school and went near her. She turned around, and as he remembers, she didn't have eyes. It was just black holes. She had a sad expression on her face. He woke up to my parents trying to calm him down. I remember being right outside his room, peeking inside. He was legit crying, and I never saw him act that way before. I'm pretty sure he pissed himself. I'm not sure. My other older brother, let's call him Mark. I believe he had the worst of it, since he slept not even 5 feet away from the doll. He also had a dream about the girl in the dress and the doll as well. The his dream wasn't scary, but anxiety-inducing in my opinion. All he remembers is sitting at the dinner table. The girl with the white dress sitting across from him with the doll next to the girl. Apparently, the doll was blinking and the girl was emotionless, not blinking whatsoever. This is when he started hearing a clock tick. It ticked and ticked before he suddenly woke up in a sweat. But the problem was, the doll wasn't at the cabinet. It instead was right in front of him. He screamed and threw it towards the closet, breaking the head of the damn thing. My mom came in and thought someone broke in. She saw the doll with the broken head on the floor, and the creepiest thing was the doll was upright with the head right behind it. While she was extremely angry, she was just glad he was safe and threw the doll out. I've had nightmares my whole life. Most of my dreams are lucid at the very least, where I'm aware of the dream and choose either to press forward into adventure or force myself to wake up. But sometimes it feels so real that I can't tell it's a dream, and I end up trapped. I think I need to explain the setting a little before I get into things. 12 years ago, we moved into my neighbour's apartment when they moved out. We lived there for a few years, till we eventually left when I was 14. I was friends with the neighbour's kids before they moved out. When I visited the apartment, I noticed the bathroom was painted a deep red, making it appear very dark even with the lights on. It was a little spooky. The neighbours also collected a like of Native American stuff, like dream catchers and things like that. When we moved in later on, the red was painted over with off-white. The red was still slightly visible as tiny specks in random places though. Also, there weren't any windows in the bathroom. Here's the main thing I wanted to talk about. Among all the ghosts and monsters in my dreams, there's one that stands out to me the most. It started when I dreamed of that apartment. During any dream, if I entered that bathroom at any point, there was always a heavy sense of dread. Some dark mass was in the bathtub that slowly drained away the light in the room, making it dimmer and making me feel slower. I consciously ignored it every time because I didn't want to show it any fear. Over the years of dreaming about that, it got bigger and drained more light. Eventually, when it was strong enough, it appeared in places outside of the bathroom, like under beds or inside cabinets, or even entire rooms. Basically, I had to consciously avoid any dark places in my dreams. A couple times, it tried to pull me into it. The floor and gravity would work against me, and I'd be crawling on the floor, pulling myself up with the door frame, just to avoid getting caught. It caught me twice. The first time, I wanted to see if there was even a reason to be scared. I basically let it take me. What happened was I ended up in a different plane. Some endless pitch black void where no matter where I went, I couldn't escape. My screaming was muted. Fear was overwhelming me. I heard loud whispers inside my head. The second time I was in that void was a complete accident. I took up an entire closet at that apartment and appeared as if it was a staircase to a basement. In that dream, I was simply curious about what was in there, but it was of course a trap. The second time, the whispers were a lot louder, but I couldn't make out anything they said. I felt like they were literally whispering into my ear. The final time I saw this thing, it had completely evolved. It took the form of an 8-foot pitch black portal. It survived in the sunlight, and when I flipped the light switch on, it would flick back off on its own. I kept fighting to keep the switch on. Then I turned around and saw this tall demon thing. It was the most satanic looking thing, and since the dream felt real, it was probably the most terrified I'd ever been in a dream. It was basically a pitch black imp with either pointed ears or horns on its head, long arms with big claws that reached down to their knees. Their whole body seemed very jagged and strange. I knew it was a dream at this point. I forced myself awake with every ounce of willpower I had. But when I woke up, I was paralyzed. The demon was on my back, biting my neck, scratching my arm. I was there for a good 15 seconds, freaking out. Then I realized that maybe if I just relaxed, then it would kill me, and I'd wake up. The pain faded when I relaxed, and it felt like they were gone. Then I woke up from that paralysis state. I've had other sleep paralysis things happen, but this one stands out to me the most, because it was from the same creature from years of dreams. That void shadow thing hasn't shown up again since then.